The silver ships came on a Tuesday morning when most of Earth was just starting their day. They appeared without warning in the skies above New York, London, Tokyo, and Seoul. The massive vessels hung in the air like floating metal mountains, casting long shadows over the cities below. People stopped their cars and stepped out to stare at the impossible sight above them. Office workers pressed their faces against windows while children pointed excitedly from school playgrounds. Commander Park Ji-ho was in his office at the Korean Space Defense Initiative when the first reports came in. His coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips as he watched the live feeds on his monitors. The ships were beautiful in a strange way, all smooth curves and gleaming metal that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. But Ji-ho had been a soldier for 20 years, and beautiful things in the sky usually meant trouble. His colleague, Dr. Kim, Yoonji burst through his office door without knocking. Her usually neat lab coat was wrinkled and her hair was messy from running. "Ji-ho, are you seeing this?" she said, not really asking. "The energy readings are off the charts, but they are not." "Hostile signatures?" Ji-ho nodded and set down his coffee. "Not hostile yet," he said quietly. "But ships that big don't show up just to say hello." Around the world, military bases went to high alert, but there was nothing they could do. The ships were too big, too advanced, and most importantly, they had not done anything threatening. They just waited in the sky like patient gods looking down at tiny humans below. 3 hours after their arrival, the ships finally spoke. Every television, radio, and internet device on Earth received the same message at exactly the same time. The voice was melodic and warm, speaking in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, Korean, and dozens of other languages all at once, somehow making sense to everyone who heard it. "People of Earth," the voice said, "do not be afraid. We come in peace and friendship. I am Ambassador Kithara of the Valdari Protectorate. We have traveled far to reach you with an offer that will change your world forever." The message continued, with instructions for Earth's leaders to gather at the United Nations building in New York. The alien ambassador would address them in person in 6 hours. Then the transmission ended and the ships returned to their silent watching. Ji-ho and Yoonji were on the first military transport to New York. During the flight, Ji-ho stared out the window at the alien ship hanging over the city. "They are being very polite," he said to Yoonji, who was reading sensor data on her tablet. "Too polite," she agreed without looking up. "When someone shows up at your house with a tank and asks nicely to come in, you wonder what they really want." The United Nations building was chaos when they arrived. Security forces from every major nation had set up perimeters while diplomats and military leaders rushed in and out of meetings. Ji-ho and Yoonji found seats in the back of the General Assembly Hall, where they could watch but stay out of the way. At exactly the promised time, something amazing happened. The air in front of the podium began to shimmer like heat waves on hot pavement. Then slowly a figure began to appear as if stepping through an invisible door. Ambassador Kithara was tall, maybe 8 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly from within. Instead of hair, crystalline structures grew from the being's head and caught the light like diamonds. The alien's eyes were large and golden and seemed kind and wise. "Leaders of Earth," Kithara said, and the voice was the same warm tone from the broadcast but now coming from the graceful figure at the podium. "I stand before you today with news that your species has waited millennia to hear. You are no longer alone in the universe." The hall was completely silent. Every person held their breath, waiting for what came next. "Your world is beautiful and your people show great promise," the ambassador continued. "But you are young and the galaxy is vast and dangerous. There are species among the stars who would see your world burned and your people enslaved. Pirates who raid peaceful planets for resources and slaves. War fleets that destroy entire civilizations for sport. Ancient evils that consume worlds and leave nothing but empty space behind." Several diplomats shifted nervously in their seats. This was not the friendly first contact they had hoped for. "But do not despair," Kithara said, raising one long, elegant hand. "The Valdari Protectorate has watched over younger species for thousands of years. We have ships more powerful than anything these threats possess. We have technology that can shield worlds from any attack. We offer you our protection freely, asking nothing in return except your friendship and trust." The ambassador paused and looked around the room with those golden eyes. "Accept our offer, and no harm will ever come to your world. You can grow and learn in peace while we stand guard against the darkness. Your children and their children will know a galaxy where Earth is safe and protected forever." The hall erupted in whispers and excited conversations. Several world leaders stood to ask questions about what this protection would mean, what it would cost, what Earth would need to do in return. Kithara answered each question with patience and kindness. There would be no cost, no requirements, no changes to how humans lived their lives. The Valdari would simply watch over Earth from space and keep all threats away. In the back of the hall, Jiho leaned over to Yunji and whispered, "That's it, just protection." Yunji was trying not to smile. They really don't know us at all, do they? Around them, other military officers and intelligence operatives from various nations were having similar quiet conversations. There was a look passing between them, the same expression Jiho had seen on soldiers' faces right before they sprang a trap. It was the look of predators pretending to be prey. The formal vote was unnecessary. Every nation on Earth agreed to accept the Valdari protection. How could they not agree to safety from cosmic threats they never even knew existed? The crowd cheered and diplomats shook hands while cameras recorded humanity's first alliance with an alien species. But Jiho noticed that many of the military people in the room were not cheering. They were thinking. They were already planning. Because soldiers understood something that diplomats often forgot. When someone offers you protection, they are also telling you that you are weak and helpless. And humans had never been very good at being weak and helpless. As the ceremony continued and Earth officially became a protected world under Valdari guardianship, Jiho caught the eye of Colonel Maria Santos from the Brazilian Space Command. She gave him a tiny nod and the slightest smile. Across the aisle, General Viktor Petrov from the Russian Federation was taking careful notes about the ambassador's technology displays. In the front row, Admiral Chen Liu from the Chinese Navy was recording everything on a hidden device. They were all thinking the same thing that Jiho was thinking. The Valdari had just made their first mistake. They had assumed that humans would be grateful to be protected. They had assumed that Earth's people would be happy to let someone else handle the dangerous galaxy for them. They had assumed that a species which had clawed its way from caves to space in just a few thousand years would be content to sit back and let aliens do the fighting. As Ambassador Kithara finished the ceremony with promises of peace and safety, Jiho made a mental note to contact his counterparts in other countries very soon. There would be much to discuss in the coming days. The aliens had offered protection, which meant they thought humans needed protection. But Jiho had studied enough military history to know that the most dangerous enemy was the one who let you think they were harmless. And humanity had just been given the perfect opportunity to be completely underestimated by everyone else in the galaxy. The thought made him smile. 3 months had passed since the Valdari ships first appeared in Earth's skies. The world had settled into a strange new routine with alien protectors watching from orbit. Most people had returned to their normal lives, though they still looked up sometimes to see the silver shapes moving slowly across the stars at night. The Valdari had been true to their word about protection. Twice they had destroyed asteroids that were heading toward Earth, turning dangerous space rocks into harmless dust with weapons that made no sound and left no trace. Once they had chased away what they called scout ships from something called the Krek's hegemony, showing Earth's people recordings of dark, angular vessels fleeing the solar system when the Valdari appeared. Dr. Lee Dongyun was working late in his laboratory at Seoul National University when the first sign of trouble appeared. He had been developing a new type of engine that could push spacecraft much faster than anything humans had built before. The mathematics were complex but promising, and his early tests suggested it might even work. The knock on his lab door came at 11 o'clock at night. Dongyun looked up from his calculations to see a tall figure in the doorway. The visitor was human but wearing clothes that seemed to shift and shimmer in the fluorescent light. The man's face was pleasant, and his smile was warm, but something about his eyes seemed wrong. "Dr. Lee," the visitor said in perfect Korean. My name is Advisor Macon. I represent the Valdari Cultural Exchange Program. May I come in? Donghyun had heard of the advisors. They were humans who had volunteered to work with the aliens, learning their technology and helping to smooth relations between the species. But he had never expected one to visit him personally. Of course, Donghyun said, setting down his stylus. How can I help you? Macon stepped into the lab and his eyes immediately went to the equations covering the whiteboard. His expression became concerned. Dr. Lee, I understand you are working on advanced propulsion systems. Yes, experimental work, Donghyun replied carefully. Nothing that violates any treaties or agreements. Oh, you are not in trouble, Macon said quickly, but his smile seemed forced now. The Valdari simply worry that such research might attract unwanted attention. You see, when young species develop certain technologies too quickly, it can be seen as aggressive by other galactic powers. It might make them think Earth is preparing for war, Donghyun frowned. But this is just scientific research, we are not building weapons. Of course not, Macon agreed. But the Krex hegemony and others like them do not always make such distinctions. They see fast ships and they think invasion fleets. They see new engines and they think humanity is preparing to threaten them. The Valdari protection works best when Earth appears peaceful and non-threatening. The conversation continued for another hour with Macon, gently but firmly explaining why Donghyun's research was dangerous. Not dangerous to Earth, but dangerous to the peace the Valdari were working so hard to maintain. By the time the advisor left, Donghyun had agreed to focus his work on safer projects like improved life support systems and better communications equipment. But as he erased his equations from the whiteboard later that night, Donghyun felt like he was throwing away years of work, and he wondered if this was really about protecting Earth or about something else entirely. Captain Yoon Mirai was having similar thoughts 3 weeks later as her deep space exploration ship approached the edge of the solar system. She commanded the KSV Explorer, one of Earth's most advanced research vessels, and her mission was to study the outer planets and map potential resources in the asteroid belt. The Valdari patrol ship appeared on her sensors when she was still 2 hours away from Neptune's orbit. It was sleek and beautiful like all their vessels, but it moved to intercept her course with unmistakable purpose. KSV Explorer, this is Valdari patrol ship Guardian's Light, came the transmission. The voice was artificial but pleasant. Please adjust your course to remain within the inner system boundary. Mirai checked her navigation charts. Guardian's Light, we are still well within human space according to all established agreements. Our mission is approved by both Earth authorities and the Valdari Protectorate. That is correct, Captain Yoon, the alien voice replied. However, recent intelligence suggests increased Krex activity in the outer system. For your safety and the safety of your crew, we must ask that you return to the inner planets until this threat passes. Mirai looked at her sensor readings. Space around them was completely empty, except for the usual asteroids and ice chunks. Guardian's Light, our sensors show no other vessels in the area. The Krex use advanced stealth technology that your sensors cannot detect, came the reply. Please trust our superior detection capabilities and return to safe areas immediately. This is for your own protection. There was something in the tone that made it clear this was not really a request. Mirai ordered her ship to change course back toward Mars, but she spent the return journey wondering when protection had started to feel so much like imprisonment. Meanwhile, Commander Park Ji-ho was discovering that he was not the only one having doubts about their alien guardians. His secure communication device had been buzzing constantly for weeks with messages from military contacts around the world. Everyone was reporting similar experiences, research projects being discouraged, missions being turned back, and always the same explanation about safety and protection. Ji-ho arranged a meeting in an underground conference room beneath Seoul. The facility was shielded from electronic surveillance and had been built during the old tensions with North Korea. Now it was serving a different purpose as representatives from 6 different nations gathered around a metal table. They think we are pets, said Colonel Maria Santos from Brazil as she spread out intelligence reports. Look at this. Every nation reports the same pattern. Any technology that could be used for space travel gets discouraged. Any mission that goes too far from Earth gets turned back. Any research that might lead to better weapons gets quietly shut down. General Viktor Petrov nodded grimly. In Russia, we have tried to maintain our deep space monitoring stations. 3 times now, Valdari ships have experienced mysterious technical failures near our facilities, always with apologies and explanations about solar radiation or gravitational anomalies. The same thing happened to our lunar mining operation, added Admiral Chen Lu. Suddenly, the Valdari discovered that our mining techniques were causing dangerous instability in the moon's core. Very concerned for our safety, they suggested we halt all operations immediately. Dr. Kim Yoonji had been quiet during the meeting, but now she looked up from her tablet. I have been analyzing the energy signatures from their ships, she said. The Valdari vessels that patrol our system are not the same ones that drove off the Krek scouts. The room went silent. Jiho leaned forward. What do you mean, the ships that fought the Kreks were much more powerful, Yoonji explained. Military vessels with serious weapons and armor. But the ships that watch us are lighter, faster, designed for patrol and surveillance rather than combat. They have been broadcasting something into space on a frequency we cannot normally detect. She touched her tablet, and a waveform appeared on the wall screen. I managed to record part of the signal. It repeats every 6 hours and goes out toward the galactic core. I cannot decode it completely, but I recognize some of the mathematical patterns. What kind of patterns? Asked Santos. Territorial markings, Yoonji said quietly. The kind of signal you would broadcast to warn other species away from an area you have claimed. They are not just protecting us, they are marking us as their property. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Jiho felt a familiar sensation from his military training, the moment when you realize the enemy has been planning longer and more carefully than you thought. There is something else, Yoonji continued. Those Krek ships they drove away. I analyzed the sensor recordings from our satellites. The energy signatures suggest those were not warships. They were diplomatic vessels, exploration ships, the kind you send when you want to make contact with a new species. Petrov's face went dark. They drove away potential allies and told us they were protecting us from enemies. It gets worse, said Dr. Sarah Kim, a communications specialist who had been monitoring alien transmissions. I have been tracking all Valdari communications since they arrived. Most of it is encrypted beyond our ability to decode, but sometimes they send messages in what they think are secure channels. 3 days ago, I intercepted something troubling. She activated her own recording device. The voice that emerged was clearly Valdari, speaking in their musical language, but a computer had provided a partial translation beneath the alien words. Protected species status confirmed. Humans show no signs of advanced military capability. Cultural development remains within acceptable parameters. Resource survey proceeding as planned. Recommend continuing current protocols for another 6 months before beginning next phase. The recording ended and nobody spoke for a long moment. Finally, Jiho broke the silence. Next phase, he said grimly. I don't think we want to find out what that means. Around the table, the representatives of Earth's most powerful nations looked at each other with growing understanding. The Valdari had not come to protect humanity. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday morning when every radio telescope on Earth started screaming warnings about massive energy signatures approaching the solar system. Dr. Kim Yoonji was in her office at the Korean Space Defense Initiative when the alerts began flooding her screens. The readings were unlike anything they had recorded before. Dozens of large objects moving faster than should be possible, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Commander Park, Jiho arrived at the facility 15 minutes later to find the entire building in controlled chaos. Scientists and military personnel rushed between workstations while emergency protocols activated across the globe. Through the windows, he could see Valdari patrol ships breaking formation and accelerating toward the outer system with obvious urgency. How bad is it? Jiho asked as he reached Yoonji's workstation. She looked up from her monitors with a pale face. Bad, really bad. Whatever is coming, it makes the Valdari fleet look like fishing boats. On the main display screen, a tactical overview showed the solar system with dozens of red dots approaching from interstellar space. Each dot represented a vessel larger than anything Earth had ever seen. The computer estimated that the smallest ships in the approaching fleet were at least 5 times bigger than the Valdari's largest vessels. "The Valdari are trying to form a defensive line near Jupiter," reported Lieutenant Park Minho from the communications station. "But their ships are scattered across the system. It will take hours for them to concentrate their forces." Jiho studied the tactical display with growing concern. In his 20 years as a soldier, he had learned to recognize when a battle was already lost before it started. The approaching fleet was simply too large, too organized, and too well positioned. The Valdari were brave, but they were about to be overwhelmed. 2 hours later, the invasion fleet entered the inner solar system and finally revealed itself. The ships were dark and angular, built for war rather than exploration. They moved in perfect formation like a school of mechanical sharks swimming through space. At their head was a vessel so large it could have swallowed entire cities. Earth's television networks interrupted regular programming to broadcast emergency alerts while world leaders gathered in crisis meetings. In orbit above the planet, the remaining Valdari ships took defensive positions, but everyone could see they were vastly outnumbered. Then the enemy fleet began broadcasting. The voice that filled every communication device on Earth was deep and harsh, speaking in accented English that sounded like rocks grinding together. "People of Earth, I am Warlord Thane of the Krex hegemony. Your Valdari protectors have filled your heads with lies about our intentions. We did not come to your system as enemies. We came as potential allies seeking peaceful contact with your young species." Ambassador Kithara's voice immediately interrupted the broadcast. "Do not listen to their deceptions. The Krex are conquerors and slavers who destroy civilizations for profit. We drove them away to protect you." Warlord Thane's laughter was like metal scraping stone. "Protect them? Is that what you call it, Valdari? When you claim a species as your property and isolate them from the galactic community, when you prevent them from developing their own defenses or making their own choices about who they wish to meet among the stars." In the Korean Space Defense Initiative's command center, Jiho and Yoonji exchanged meaningful looks. The alien warlord was describing exactly what they had discovered about the Valdari's true intentions. "The humans deserve to know the truth," Thane continued. "The Valdari did not come to protect you. They came to harvest you. Your world is rich in resources they need, and your species shows genetic traits they wish to study and exploit. They have kept you isolated and helpless while they prepare to strip your planet bare and take your people as specimens for their laboratories." Kithara's reply was swift and desperate. "Lies and propaganda designed to turn you against your protectors. The Krex seek to conquer your world and enslave your people. Do not be deceived by their false words." But Warlord Thane was not finished. "Humans of Earth, we offer you a choice. Your Valdari keepers never gave you. Surrender your world to us now and your deaths will be swift and painless. Resist, and we will take what we want by force and leave your planet burning behind us. You have 1 hour to decide." The broadcast ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. President Kim Tae-won of the Korean Federation was in emergency session with world leaders when Ambassador Kithara materialized in the United Nations building through the same shimmering portal as before. But this time the elegant alien's composure was cracked. Fear showed clearly in those golden eyes. "Leaders of Earth," Kithara said, and the musical voice was strained with panic. "I must be honest with you. Our fleet cannot stop the Krex armada. They brought more ships than our intelligence suggested they possessed. We may not be able to protect you from this threat." The admission sent shockwaves through the assembled diplomats. For months, the Valdari had presented themselves as invincible guardians. Now they were confessing weakness. "What are you saying?" demanded President Helen Morrison of the United States. "I am saying that we must begin emergency evacuation procedures," Kithara replied. "We can save perhaps a few million of your people, relocate them to protected worlds in Valdari space. The rest..." The ambassador's voice trailed off. "The rest can die fighting for their home," said President Kim Tae-won quietly. Kithara looked at him with something like pity. "You are a brave species, but courage cannot overcome such impossible odds. You have no weapons that can harm ships of that magnitude. No shields that can protect you from their assault. You are a protected species because you lack the military capabilities to defend yourselves. President Kim smiled, and there was something in that expression that made even the alien ambassador step backward. Ambassador, with all respect, you may have some resources you are not aware of. Resources? Kythera sounded confused. What resources could you possibly have that we do not know about? We have monitored your world for months. You have no interstellar vessels, no energy weapons capable of space combat, no defensive systems that could affect ships of this scale. In response, President Kim simply activated his emergency communicator. Commander Park, would you like to show our friend what we have been working on? In the Korean Space Defense Initiative Command Center, Jiho smiled as he received the authorization codes he had been waiting for. Around him, similar signals were being transmitted to secret facilities around the globe. Military installations that had been disguised as civilian projects suddenly came online. Research stations that appeared to be studying weather patterns revealed their true purpose. Mining operations on asteroids and the moon dropped their false identities. All stations report ready, announced General Park Ji-yoon, who had arrived, to take command of the operation. She was Jiho's older sister and had spent the last decade preparing for exactly this moment. Jiho activated the primary communications array and sent a coded signal toward the approaching Krex fleet. The message was simple and direct. Krex Hegemony, this is Commander Park Jiho of the Human Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from our solar system, or we will demonstrate why Earth has never actually needed protection. On the tactical display, something remarkable began to happen. Energy signatures that had been masked as background radiation suddenly blazed to life throughout the solar system. What the aliens had thought were mining stations on asteroids revealed themselves to be weapons platforms, bristling with advanced armaments. The communication satellites orbiting Earth dropped their disguises to show they were actually defensive installations. Hidden shipyards on the far side of Luna opened their doors, and from those secret shipyards emerged humanity's true face, sleek predatory vessels that moved through space like hunting cats, their hulls painted in dark colors that seemed to absorb light. Ships designed not for exploration or defense, but for war. Warlord Thane's voice came over the communications channel, no longer sounding quite so confident. Impossible. Our intelligence showed no advanced military capabilities. Your species was classified as primitive and helpless. Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see, replied Admiral Cho Soo-young from the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable. Did you really think a species that went from horse-drawn carts to spaceflight in 1 century would just stop innovating because some aliens told us we were safe? The Krex fleet hesitated, clearly confused by this unexpected development. Their formation wavered as ship commanders tried to assess this new threat that had appeared from nowhere. You cannot possibly have developed such technology so quickly, Thane protested. We have been monitoring your world for decades. You had no interstellar capability when we first detected your species. No visible interstellar capability, corrected Dr. Ryu Hansel from Earth's command center. But we have been watching the galaxy much longer than you think. Every ship that entered our system, every probe that passed near our world, every transmission you thought was secret. We studied it all. We learned from it all. We improved on it all. Around the solar system, human vessels moved into attack positions, with fluid grace that made the Krex warships look clumsy by comparison. Warlord Thane's response came exactly 30 seconds later, and it was not a withdrawal order. The Krex fleet opened fire with everything they had, sending streams of plasma and particle beams toward the human ships that had dared to threaten them. The space around Earth lit up with weapons fire that should have ended the battle before it truly began. But the human ships simply were not there when the enemy fire arrived. Admiral Cho Soo-young watched from the bridge of the Indomitable, as Krex weapons passed harmlessly through empty space where her vessel had been microseconds before. The quantum displacement drives that Dr. Lee Dong-yun had developed in secret were working perfectly, allowing human ships to step sideways through dimensions and appear somewhere else entirely. All ships, Execute attack pattern Sejong, she commanded, naming the assault plan after the ancient Korean king who had defeated larger armies through superior tactics and technology. What happened next shattered both alien species' understanding of warfare. Human vessels materialized inside the Krex formation like ghosts becoming solid. Their weapons were unlike anything either the Krex or Valdari had ever seen, focused energy beams that passed through shields as if they did not exist and struck directly at the molecular bonds holding enemy ships together. The first Krex destroyer simply came apart like a puzzle with all its pieces falling away from each other. There was no explosion, no dramatic destruction, just a warship that suddenly became a cloud of component atoms drifting in space. Impossible, Warlord Thane's voice cracked over the communication channel. No species possesses molecular dissolution, weaponry. The technology does not exist, Commander Park Ji-ho answered from his command post on Earth while watching the battle unfold on tactical displays. It exists now. We built it. You see, when you spend centuries being invaded and conquered by each other, you learn to think creatively about how to destroy things that are trying to kill you. The battle was less a fight than a demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. Human ships moved through space in ways that defied physics, appearing and disappearing at will, striking from impossible angles, and coordinating their attacks with precision that spoke of decades of planning and preparation. Captain Yoon Mirai commanded the destroyer Swift Justice, one of the smaller vessels in the human fleet. Her ship danced between Krex battleships like a hummingbird among elephants, too fast and agile for their weapons to track. When she fired, entire sections of enemy vessels simply ceased to exist. Mirai to Fleet Command, she reported. The Krex ships are trying to retreat, but their formation is collapsing. Their commanders are panicking and giving contradictory orders. Dr. Kim Yoonji monitored the battle from the Korean Space Defense Initiative and marveled at how perfectly their plans were working. Every human ship knew exactly where to be and when to be there. Every weapon fired at precisely the right moment to cause maximum damage. This was not the desperate improvisation of a species fighting for survival. This was the methodical execution of a strategy that had been refined for years. "My Krex are requesting parley," announced Lieutenant Park Min-ho from the communications station. "Tell them parley is for equals," replied Admiral Cho from the Indomitable as her ship materialized directly above the Krex flagship. "They chose to come to our home and threaten our families. Now they can face the consequences." The Admiral's ship fired once, a single precisely aimed beam that carved through the massive Krex dreadnought from bow to stern. The enemy flagship broke in half and began spinning slowly apart, its crew compartments venting atmosphere and debris into space. In the United Nations building, Ambassador Kithara watched the destruction with growing horror and amazement. "This is impossible," the Valdari whispered. "Your species was pre-industrial when we first detected you. You had barely reached your own moon." President Kim Tae-won smiled grimly. "Ambassador, you detected exactly what we wanted you to detect. Do you really think a species that survived ice ages, volcanic winters, plagues, and constant warfare would not learn to be very good at hiding from predators?" Dr. Ryu Hansel stepped forward with a tablet displaying historical records. "We have been monitoring extraterrestrial activity for over 200 years. The first alien probe entered our solar system in 1823. We tracked it, studied it, and learned from it. Every probe after that taught us more about galactic technology and politics." The recording showed grainy images of objects in space that had been dismissed by human governments as natural phenomena or optical illusions. But now it was clear that they had been carefully documented and analyzed by secret organizations that spanned multiple nations and generations. By 1950, we had reverse-engineered faster-than-light communication, Hansel continued. By 1975, we had working prototypes of energy weapons. By 2000, we had our first interstellar vessels, but we were careful to keep them hidden and to maintain the appearance of a species that was struggling to reach its own moon. Kithara staggered backward as the implications hit home. The primitive rocket launches, the clumsy space stations, the failed missions to Mars. all carefully staged to make you think we were exactly as helpless as we appeared, confirmed General Park Ji-yoon over the communication link. Every failure was planned. Every setback was deliberate. We needed the galaxy to see us as harmless until we were ready to show our true capabilities. In space, the battle was reaching its conclusion. The Krex fleet that had arrived with such confidence was now scattered wreckage drifting through the solar system. Of the 60 warships that had threatened Earth, only a handful remained intact, and those were broadcasting desperate surrender signals. Warlord Thane's voice came over the communication channel one final time, but now it was broken and defeated. Human fleet, we surrender. We did not know. We were not told. The Valdari informed us that your species was primitive and defenseless. We came here expecting to face stone spears and chemical rockets, not weapons that surpass anything in the galaxy. Admiral Cho's reply was cold and professional. Warlord, your surviving ships will depart our solar system immediately and never return. You will broadcast to all Krex territories that Earth is under human protection, not alien protection. Any vessel that enters our space without permission will be destroyed without warning. Do you understand? Understood, came the humbled reply. We will spread word throughout the galaxy that humans are not to be threatened or approached without formal diplomatic contact. Your species will be reclassified as a major galactic power with full territorial rights. The remaining Krex ships gathered their dead and wounded, then jumped to hyperspace as quickly as their damaged engines could carry them. In less than 4 hours, the invasion fleet that had seemed unstoppable was completely destroyed or driven away. But the most shocked observers were not the defeated Krex. They were the Valdari, who had spent months thinking they were protecting. Helpless primitives only to discover they had been living among apex predators who had been studying them like laboratory specimens. Ambassador Kythera turned to face the human leaders with something approaching fear in those golden eyes. What happens now? The alien asked quietly. President Kim Tae-won consulted briefly with his advisors, then answered with diplomatic calm. Now, Ambassador, we have some things to discuss. You see, we have been recording and analyzing every communication your ships have sent since you arrived. We know about the territorial broadcasts. We know about the resource surveys. We know about the plans for a second phase of contact that would not have been as pleasant as the first. Kythera's luminescent skin grew pale. You cannot possibly have decoded our secure transmissions. Dr. Sarah Kim stepped forward with a satisfied smile. Ambassador, we decoded your language completely within the first week. Did you forget that we had 200 years to study alien communication protocols? Your encryption was based on mathematical principles we mastered decades ago. The alien ambassador looked around the room at the human faces surrounding them and finally understood the true situation. Earth had never been a protected world inhabited by primitive beings who needed alien guidance. It had been a trap, baited with the appearance of helplessness and weakness, waiting for someone to be foolish enough to think they could control or exploit humanity. What do you want from us? Kythera asked, and for the first time since arriving at Earth, the Valdari sounded like a supplicant rather than a protector. That, said President Kim, is an excellent question, and the answer will determine whether your people leave our solar system as enemies or as the first alien species to establish genuine diplomatic relations with humanity. In the command centers around Earth, military officers who had spent years preparing for this moment finally allowed themselves to smile. The masquerade was over. The galaxy was about to learn that the most dangerous predators were often the ones who looked the most harmless. And Commander Park Ji-ho, watching the tactical displays that showed human ships patrolling the space where alien invaders had been destroyed, reflected that his species had just announced themselves to the universe in the most human way possible, by completely exceeding everyone's expectations of what they were capable of achieving. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council convened exactly 24 hours after the last Krex ship had fled the solar system. But this meeting was unlike any in human history because sitting at the table alongside Earth's leaders was Ambassador Kythera, no longer speaking as a protector to protected species, but as a representative of one galactic power negotiating with another. The alien's crystalline features had lost their confident glow, replaced by the careful neutrality of a diplomat who had badly misjudged the balance of power. President Kim Tae-won opened the session with words that would reshape humanity's relationship with the galaxy. Ambassador Kithara, for the past several months your people have maintained a presence in our solar system under the premise of protection, Kim began. However, recent events have made it clear that this arrangement was based on fundamental misunderstandings on both sides. Commander Park Ji-ho sat in the observation gallery, watching as the most important negotiation in human history began. Beside him, Dr. Kim Yoon-ji was monitoring communication intercepts from Valdari ships in orbit. Their transmissions had become increasingly frantic as reports of Earth's military capabilities spread through their fleet. The Valdari Protectorate acknowledges that we may have underestimated certain aspects of human development, Kithara said carefully. However, our intentions were always peaceful. We genuinely believed your species required assistance to survive in a dangerous galaxy, General. Park Ji-yoon, who had arrived from the Fleet Command Center, leaned forward from her position at the military advisory table. Ambassador, your people have been broadcasting territorial claim markers around our solar system and conducting unauthorized resource surveys of our asteroid belt. Our communications intelligence has decoded your transmissions discussing timeline for what you called the second phase of contact. These do not appear to be the actions of benevolent protectors. The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a fired weapon. Kithara's golden eyes shifted between the human faces around the table, clearly calculating how much of their deception had been uncovered. I will not insult your intelligence by denying what your technology has apparently revealed, the ambassador finally said. Yes, the Protectorate had plans beyond simple protection. Your world possesses resources that are valuable, and your species shows genetic and cultural traits that are of scientific interest. But I must emphasize that our eventual intentions were not malevolent. Dr. Ryu Hansel spoke from his position as Earth's chief xenobiologist. Ambassador, in your files we found references to specimen collection quotas and cultural adaptation protocols. Would you care to explain what those terms mean? Kithara's luminescent skin flickered with what might have been embarrassment or fear. The Protectorate has established similar relationships with 17 other developing species throughout the galaxy. In each case, we have guided their development while conducting research that benefits both civilizations. Some individuals volunteer for extended stays in Valdari research facilities to advance our understanding of galactic biodiversity. Volunteer, President Kim repeated with dangerous quiet. And what happens to species that decline to volunteer? The silence stretched uncomfortably long before Kithara answered. Most species eventually recognize the benefits of cooperation with the Protectorate. The galaxy is vast and dangerous for civilizations that attempt to stand alone. Minister Ko Hyun-woo, Earth's newly appointed Secretary of Interstellar Affairs, smiled with predatory politeness. Ambassador, I think there may be some confusion about our current situation. You seem to believe that humanity is still a developing species that requires guidance from more advanced civilizations. Recent events suggest this assessment may need revision. Through the large windows of the Security Council chamber, the representatives could see human warships patrolling the space between Earth and Luna. The vessels moved with fluid grace that made even the advanced Valdari ships look clumsy by comparison. It was a visible reminder that the balance of power had shifted dramatically. What exactly are you proposing? Kithara asked with the wary tone of someone who suspected they were not going to like the answer. Minister Ko slid a document across the table toward the alien ambassador. This is a proposed mutual defense and cooperation treaty between the Valdari Protectorate and the Human Federation. It establishes Earth and its solar system as sovereign human territory, while opening diplomatic and trade relationships between our civilizations. Kithara examined the document with growing amazement. The treaty was written in perfect Valdari, legal language with complexities and subtleties that suggested deep understanding of galactic law. It addressed territorial boundaries, resource rights, technology sharing protocols, and dispute resolution procedures with the sophistication of a document produced by species with centuries of interstellar diplomatic experience. "This is remarkable," the ambassador admitted. "How long have you been studying galactic legal frameworks?" "Since 1847, answered Dr. Sarah Kim from her position at the communications table. "That was when we intercepted and decoded our first interstellar legal document, a territorial dispute between two species in the Centauri region. We have been monitoring and recording galactic legal proceedings ever since." The implications were staggering. While the Valdari had believed they were dealing with primitives who barely understood their own solar system, humanity had actually been studying galactic civilization for nearly 2 centuries. Every legal precedent, every diplomatic protocol, every military doctrine used by interstellar species had been catalogued and analyzed by human scholars working in secret. "Article 7 interests me particularly," Kithara said, pointing to a section of the treaty. "You propose to extend protection to other developing species that request human assistance. This suggests you intend to compete directly with the Protectorate's traditional role." President Kim nodded calmly. "Ambassador, humanity has always believed that developing civilizations should have the right to choose their own path among the stars. We are prepared to offer alternative arrangements to species that prefer genuine partnership over paternalistic guidance." The threat was politely phrased but unmistakably clear. Earth was positioning itself as a rival to the Valdari Protectorate's method of managing younger species. And given the demonstrated superiority of human technology, that rivalry could quickly become very problematic for the Valdari. "There is another matter we need to discuss," said Admiral Cho Soo-young, joining the meeting via secure communication from the fleet flagship. "Our deep space sensors have detected Valdari ships gathering at the edge of 17 different star systems. All of them contain species currently under Protectorate protection. It appears word of recent events has spread quickly through your networks." Kithara's crystalline features shifted in what humans had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. "Those are precautionary deployments. Some of our protected species have been asking questions about their status since news of Earth's capabilities became known. Questions like whether they really need protection, or whether they are actually prisoners," suggested Commander Jiho from the observation gallery. The ambassador did not deny the accusation, which was answer enough. The revelation that humanity had been secretly developing advanced technology while appearing helpless had sent shockwaves through the Valdari's network of protected worlds. Species that had accepted alien guidance for decades were suddenly wondering what capabilities they might have developed if they had been left to grow naturally. "The Protectorate faces a choice," said Minister Ko with diplomatic precision. "You can accept this treaty and begin transitioning to relationships based on equality and mutual respect. Or you can attempt to maintain your current system by force, knowing that humanity will actively support any species that requests liberation from unwanted protection." It was an ultimatum, wrapped in diplomatic language, and everyone in the room knew it. The Valdari could either evolve their approach to galactic relations or find themselves at war with a species that had just demonstrated the ability to destroy invasion fleets with casual efficiency. Kithara studied the treaty document for several more minutes, occasionally touching sections that activated holographic displays of legal precedents and implementation guidelines. Finally, the alien ambassador looked up with something resembling acceptance. "The Protectorate will need time to consider these proposals and consult with our governing council," Kithara said formally. "However, I am authorized to agree to immediate cessation of all resource survey activities in human territory and the withdrawal of territorial claim broadcasts. The relationship between our species will be renegotiated as equals rather than as protector and protected." President Kim smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in the expression. "Ambassador, that is an excellent beginning. And to demonstrate human good faith, we would like to extend an invitation for Valdari scientists to visit our research facilities. We believe you will find that species develop remarkable innovations when they are allowed to face challenges directly rather than being shielded from them." As the formal session concluded and arrangements were made for ongoing negotiations, Commander Jiho found himself standing at the observation window looking up at the stars.